Hey guys, as always, thanks for tuning in. Jay Helmsing here. Today I want to give you the 1 month update on Project One Gun. That is the Gen 5 Glock 19 that I have chosen to live with for the next 11 remaining months, 12 months total, and just kind of give you guys feedback and really to kind of experiment with this idea of, kind of minimalism and pushing outside of my comfort zone, and also maybe some cross training and how training on one platform, I know some of you guys don't like that terminology, but training on one type of gun and how that kind of translates to the other guns that I'm in contact with and that I have to use based on my different occupations, different professions, and things like that. So we'll get into that update in just a moment. Before we do, I want to introduce you guys to Two Gun. So this is the original One Gun. This is a new model. This is going to be basically the same exact thing, Gen 5 Glock 19. This is the Bold series. It does have the Bold sights. And it is a newer one, you can tell because the frame is beveled. So if you notice, it's got the frame beveling, whereas my One Gun does not have that. It's got the original release kind of rounded frame there. It's an aesthetic thing. I really don't care either way on that. But some of you are like, well, why does he have two guns if he's doing this thing with one gun? Well, as I went over my first update, the biggest thing that I'm worried about with this is just the overall reliability issues that I can run into when you're shooting a gun a lot or dry firing a gun a lot and then turning around and carrying the gun. So I thought for safety's sake, the best thing to do would obviously be to have a backup to this primary gun in the event that something breaks, something goes down, or I have to wait on parts to come in. Maybe I break something, a spring or whatever, and I've got to wait on that to come in. I do have an interim gun to fill in with. So that's why I purchased this gun. You can tell I have not done more than zero it, so it's got about 20 rounds through it now. If you just kind of look at the barrel kits there, there's not a whole lot of wear, and this is, like I say, it's a new gun, and it's basically just going to kind of sit in the background and be, an emergency backup for if and maybe when, some of us would say, one gun goes down. Because as you guys know, and this is not a blow against Glock or any other manufacturer, but any mechanical device can and will fail over time. And sometimes that stuff is predictable by wear. Sometimes things just give out. And I don't know that I've ever held a gun that I didn't have issues with to some extent. So especially the more you get into them, the more you shoot them, the more time you spend on them, the more you're going to experience that wear and tear and just the natural natural phenomenon of wear and things breaking. So again, this is just kind of a safeguard, so you can kind of tell if I'm differentiating the two. I just look for the sights basically. So they have the square notch in the back, and this is the Ameriglow Bold series. By the way, awesome sight picture with this. I really like it. I really like the sights. This is the gun you should get. I'm going to go ahead and come right out of the gates and say it. Unless you have a real specific sight preference, I believe that this is the gun you should get. This should probably just be the standard Glock 19 with these Ameriglow Bold sights. I really dig them. I think it's a really nice package, and it takes like the biggest weak link out of the Glock series and fixes it. Fixes it and fixed and staying fixed. So there you go with that. That's enough on Two Gun. Let's get back to One Gun because she's the star of the show here. So we'll first talk about some changes that you may notice. Last time I checked in with you guys, I had a sight failure issue, and I think in the interim I may have thrown some sights on there. But when I did that, I did some more research and I realized that the sights are actually different on these Gen 5 Glocks. So they did some sight changing. The front sight is a little bit taller on the Gen 5 Glocks, and because of that I actually went out and bought some specifically, some sights I should say, specifically for the Gen 5. And my goal was, obviously I like the Bold sights, I like the way they were set up, and I wanted to get something to replicate that on One Gun. So when I went out and looked for the Bold sights, I couldn't really find them. I found some that are offered specifically through Glock, and they're like $130, and I was like, there's no way I'm paying $130 for some Ameriglow sights. So we'll see what else is out there. Ameriglow did release what they call the Agent series. So what you see here, these are the Agent series, which are essentially the same as the Ameriglow Bold sights that are on this without the square notch in the rear. They instead have a U notch in the rear, and you'll see that there. And what I found, these are the same sights that they use on the FBI guns, so they were sourced for those FBI guns. So what I found was, in addition to having a better sight picture, a more reliable sight picture, my dancing ability has gone through the roof after putting these agent sights on. I mean, just backflips and all kinds of party things happen. I've kind of got a little bit of a tendency to jam the gun in my small of the back there. I've been kind of going away from that, but that's just something I noticed after putting these sights on. Awesome sights for dancing and kind of getting your groove on and cutting a rug and that sort of thing. But as far as functionality of the sights, they are pretty much what I'm used to as far as the really bright front. I really like that bright front, although I'm kind of starting to maybe pull back from that just a little bit. I found sometimes where the ultra bright fronts like this will kind of wash out that front edge, and you may have a little bit of difficulty getting a really precise shot off. Sometimes maybe a different color, maybe a more toned down green, yellow, something like that would be a better option, but these are defensive combat sights. You really can't go wrong with that, and you can do some really interesting optical tricks. In other words, you don't have to focus exactly on that point. You can kind of focus on like a mid-plane where you're kind of still keeping your eye on the target a little bit, but you also have a pretty good bead on the front sight and get some pretty precise and quick shots off that way. So, 6 in one basket, half dozen in the other. For now, I'm using this combination here. I will say that I did notice some issues with point of aim, point of impact with this gun, Project One gun, and these agent sights. Now here's the weird part. If you look at the Ameriglo Bold sights, this gun has not been touched. The sights have not been moved at all. I simply shot to see where it patterned, where it zeroed at, and to ensure its reliability in case I needed to use it. So when I fired this gun, I put 20 rounds through it, and if you'll notice, the front sight is significantly taller than you'd see on your typical Gen 4s or whatever. And the reason I'm showing you this gun is because on this gun, it's got perfect impact. So basically it's hitting right at point of ledge. It's the very top of this ledge here is where those bullets are impacting. However, when I tried the agent sights on this gun that had the same taller front sight, what I was getting is more of a combat sight picture. And I don't really know why that happened. I've got some theories I'll kind of get into in just a moment. But the rear sight is the same as the Ameriglo Bold as far as height. The front sight has been changed to a Gen 4 model, so the shorter, more traditional front sight has been placed on here. And again, that's for a point of aim, point of impact for me. So what I think was happening is that when I have this issue a little bit with the U-notch sights, if you look through there with the U-notch, I have a little bit of trouble really finding that square top on them, if you will. So really aligning this top and this top, because the U-notch is so deep and I see so much of that sight post, what I tend to want to do, especially under speed, is to bury that dot. And if you notice, if you bury the dot where the U is, in other words, if you put that dot in the U itself, the front sight is significantly lower than where it would be if you align the tops like you should be with a traditional partridge sight. So I'm pretty much contributing a lot of this, if not all of it, to the fact that this is a U-notch rear, and just the way my eyes work, especially under speed and picking that front sight up, is I kind of want to bury that, or I want a lower front sight post to kind of make it fit more asymmetrically, or more symmetrically, I should say, in this U-notch. Make that little circle perfectly fit in that U-notch. The way they're designed from the factory is if you align this U-notch with the front, the the actual colored part here is going to be up above the U-notch, and it's kind of it's something you get used to, but it's not something that was intuitive for me. So that is kind of the issue that I think happened, and that is why I changed out to the shorter front sight post on this gun here. And it's been point of aim, point of impact since I did that change for me with these sights. I'm not sure if that's a commonality, or if it's just something unique to me, or if it's something that I would eventually train out of by getting more experience on U-notch sights. Now, it's worth noting that I do use U-notch sights, specifically a X-Ray 3 rear sight with a Hackathorn type front sight on my duty guns and on my SIGs, basically across the board. So I'm not a stranger to U-notch rear sights. I just feel like there is something amiss with the way that these lined up, or the way that the sight picture is supposed to be out of the box. I also noticed that if you line up the dots, in other words, if it's completely dark and you line up just the tritium vials straight across like you probably should be doing, this front sight post is going to be buried. And you know, if you actually line them up to make the front sight match the rear sight, the front sight post will be higher. I hope I'm making sense. So in other words, your rear sight is here, and you have tritium vials in the middle of those two posts. If you line it up correctly, the front vial will actually be higher than the other one. So in complete darkness, you're not getting a straight across alignment of the vials. At least I was not, with the way these agent sights were out of the box. I don't know what to attribute that to. I know they did a lot of testing, and I know the FBI specifically requested certain things out of those sights. So that is my experience with them, and I did have to change to the shorter front to get a better point of aim, point of impact with the U-notch agent sights. Take it for what it is. I would probably choose the Ameriglo Bold Series sights if I could find them just on their own. That's the probably the more comfortable shooting for me would be out of just the traditional square notch, because I've noticed that these do line up across the board. You don't have any funky misalignment. I don't have any finagling to do. So just something to note there. Now, I will also say that I have noticed certain guns to shoot low, high, or really, I mean, left or right, you really don't notice. But I have noticed a height difference in certain guns, specifically certain Glocks. I've got a buddy who shoots very competitively, and he had some real issues. He had to send off his sight to Dawson Precision multiple times to have the correct height front sight made for his gun, and it is just obnoxiously large. For some reason, his gun was just shooting low no matter what. I would shoot it low, anybody else would shoot it low. We could bench rest it and shoot it low. So there is something to be said about certain tolerances in the way that the sights and the barrel and all that kind of stuff interact. I'm not sure if that's exactly the case here, or if it's just a personal preference with the way the U-notch and the picture that I was getting kind of went together. So that's that in a nutshell, okay? That's the sight issue that I've had. Let's give you guys a round count update. We're now at 1,100 live rounds, 0 issues that have been attributed to the actual gun itself in that time, and we're also at 4,500 dry fire pulls, if you will. So that is something to also note as well. So it is, you know, that's in a month. So we're talking 1,100 rounds in a month and 4,500 dry fire rounds. So I typically dry fire every day, and that's a significant amount of movement in those parts. So we'll kind of see how that wears, if something breaks, if I'm getting fatigue, stress, anything like that. While we're on the topic, let's take a look at any of the wear that I'm seeing. The slide itself is, man, it's bulletproof. I'm telling you, this finish is really, really tough. So no issues moving in and out of a holster, that sort of thing. You know, polymer is going to be polymer. There have been a few times where I've kind of abraded it. You can see here, there's a little bit of abrasion, stuff like that, but that's going to happen as you kind of beat on these Glocks. Take a look at the barrel next. We got a significant kiss mark, you know, some pretty significant wearing in there. And we'll kind of show you the barrel here in just a moment. It's nothing to be worried about. It's just a functionality of the lockup in these new Gen 5 guns, I believe. Speaking of lockup, I did notice that the lockup's kind of sloppy, really. I mean, it's not a really tight lockup as far as even Glocks go. It's not a tight lockup. So there are some kind of nuances with that you know, it's definitely reliable. I can't complain about that, and it's definitely accurate. So I don't really have an issue with it. I just kind of know that it's not the most tight feeling gun that I've had. I don't really know that it needs to be if it shoots as well as this one does. So you know, take that with a grain of salt. Let's check this real quick, break her down. I'm not going to tear this completely apart and look at the connector or anything, but you can see some pretty significant polishing there that has been occurring as that striker slides over the top of the cruciform. Other than that, I mean, there's really not a whole lot of significant wear to note. I do kind of wipe this down regularly. The tabs we have here for the slide, those are getting nicely worn in. The barrel itself, look at this funky wear on this bad boy. I mean, it's just a Gen 5 thing. It's just, like I say, probably a functionality of the different lockup in this, but some funny wear. Even this back here, I mean, what is that from, right? Something in the slide that's the way it's connecting or impacting or through the arc of movement or something. But on the actual locking lug, no real wear there, just kind of some oddball wear down the slide there. It's going to happen. Nothing to be alarmed about. Nothing really of note in the slide as far as any premature or unusual wear there. So we're going to keep hammering on it. Okay, so that's what we're looking at so far, 1 month in as far as wear goes. No issues there. Now the trigger has smoothed out significantly, as you guys would probably expect. Pull is probably about the same. It's just a much more, I wouldn't say gritty, less gritty, because it wasn't really gritty before, but it's just got a smoother feel to it. It's kind of like a homemade polish job. It's not quite as aggressive as a homemade polish job, but it is more smooth and more mated in feeling. So let's talk about, I did some training with my P320 yesterday for the department, and we know we're obviously looking at this as far as transferability. So learning these skills on this one gun, is it going to transfer to other guns? The answer that I'm gathering repeatedly has been yes. Now, as we get more into this and I get more gravitated, more polarized to this one platform, that might change. But as of right now, I'm having absolutely no issues picking up the front sight on a SIG P320, which is obviously a different grip angle. I'm having no issues pointing that gun and even out of the holster, finding the front sight and getting a good alignment. I'm not having any of those weird things people might complain about sometimes as far as ergonomics and whatever. I'm able to transfer back and forth to these two platforms no problem. And I do feel like the amount of work I'm putting in understanding this trigger it does pay off on other guns as well. I don't seem to have any bobbles or hiccups or anything transferring to another striker fired gun like the P320 that I recently fired, and then even before that the M9, I fired that for the Army. No issues that I've noticed. I think good trigger control is good trigger control, and that's basically what I'm learning through this process. So shooting impressions. So we'll talk lastly, just kind of round this little meeting out with some shooting impressions. And I've noticed some oddball things. So first off, I had some issues with the sights. When I first put I had some Gen 4 sights, and I just kind of put those Gen 4 sights on before I got these Ameriglow dance sights. And when I did that, the Ameriglow sights definitely made a difference in accuracy. So my old Gen 4 sights, I believe I was shooting probably low or something like that because of this front sight being a different height. And I was having some issues. I'd go out to the range and I'd put 200, 250 rounds down at the range, and I was having just kind of mediocre sessions. And I was like, this doesn't make sense because I'm spending a ton of time on this platform. I'm doing a ton of dry fire with this gun. I should know this gun inside and out. And I could do weird things, like I could easily hit a target moving or doing a box drill or something like that. But if it came down to really quick double taps, they just weren't there for me on certain days. I'm going to blame that mostly on shooter. I mean, as you guys know, there are different nuances to shooting. Sometimes you have you're on fire, and sometimes you're not. It's just the way it works. And again, once I change the sights, I seem to have a little bit better sight picture and to have a little bit easier time doing follow-up shots. But there have been those off days that I have experienced. So I guess kind of the takeaway for me is don't expect that a ton of time on a certain gun or a certain platform, for those of you that hate that term, is going to transfer to you becoming just a ninja with that gun. Obviously, like I say, there are some off days. I don't know that I would have had a better day with a different gun, but there were some frustrating range sessions where I was like, why are you not hitting that plate rack? Or why can I not consistently get a rundown on the plate rack? Seems to be hot or cold. As far as my overall shooting ability, I do feel like it is progressing. I am getting better as a shooter in general because I'm spending more time on a certain gun, and I'm not having to switch out and kind of take different steps and learning different things. I'm able just to pick this gun up, know it inherently, have this kind of connection to it, and then go immediately to a drill and practice that drill and really get some value training out of that. So that's kind of my observation so far as shooting impressions, what I've noted in my notes here. And that's pretty much my report to you guys so far 1 month in. Now, I kind of in these with maybe some personal feelings, personal thoughts, some anecdotal stuff as opposed to the more data-based or the more fact-based stuff that I'm seeing. But I'm feeling mixed about this whole program right now. I feel like it is a good thing to take some steps in the direction of minimalism. I feel like there is something to be gained from that, something to be gained from focusing on a specific gun and just getting some wholesome training out of it. However, at the same time, I'm still mildly concerned with the fact of putting a bunch of rounds, a bunch of dry fire pulls and whatnot into a gun, and then turning around and having that same gun strapped on my hip. So maybe those worries are going to fade away. You know, kind of like when you first start carrying, you kind of want a gun that's got a safety on it because you just have this idea that they're magically going to go off, even though they really aren't, and you kind of sort of know that. And then eventually you're comfortable enough around guns that you're like, safety, whatever. As long as I keep my finger off the trigger, get a good holster, I should be fine. And, you know, that's kind of where I'm at now. I've just have that kind of, you know, that haunting feeling in my mind about, you know, man, should I really be doing this, or should I carry a different gun for defense and train with a different gun? So we'll kind of see how that kind of shakes out in the wind as this progresses. And I'll also say that you know, the gun is kind of like it's an appliance at this point. It's not like I really look forward to shooting this gun. It's just something that is it's kind of turning into a reliable standby for me. It's something that I know I can grab, and I know that's going to shoot, and I know the nuances in and out, and I'm not going to have any issues with learning curves or growing pains or anything like that. So it's becoming more of an appliance to me. I wouldn't say I'm growing to love it. I wouldn't say that I dislike it. I would just say that it's at this point becoming more of a duty piece. It's just something that is, you know, this is my tool. This is my range tool, and that's I'm fine with that. I'm okay with that, and that's how I look at it. So not as much excitement as going and shaking out a new gun, or, you know, really getting some fun target guns out and putting some rounds down, but it does its job, and I don't have any complaints about it. I really don't. I don't have any issues or complaints or anything. I don't think that I would choose Gen 4 over this Gen 5. I don't think I would specifically run out and buy a Gen 5 if I had a Gen 4 I liked. So it's kind of like a faithful old dog to me right now. So we'll kind of see how that evolves in the future as well. Until next time, I appreciate you guys tuning in. I appreciate your viewership. I appreciate your questions and your interaction with me. And, you know, as I always say, continue to learn, progress, and grow, and to practice your craft whenever you have time to. Thanks again for tuning in. Thanks for spending some time with me. And let's go ahead and go out to the range and continue to do what we love to do, and that is put some rounds down and develop as shooters. Thanks again, guys. Have a great day.